Friends, would you please join with me in the spirit of prayer? Gracious God, move with your spirit in our very midst, that the meditations of each and every one of our minds, that the thoughts roaming around our hearts and our very spirits would be grounded in your grace and led by your love, not only in this hour, but in every single hour this week. In the name of the one who promised that Spirit to surround us anytime 2 or 3 are gathered, Jesus the Christ, we pray. Amen. At the Bixby household, there are 3 different and distinctive doorways that we tend to use to let the outside in and the inside out. And the most popular portal or point of entry that we use most frequently is the one garage door. You can tell that we use it the most because scattered around it are all of our shoes, discarded in disarray. And what makes it even more fun is the garage door is the one we tend to bring our groceries in and out of. And so you can almost picture us with our arms full of bags of food, trying to acrobatically step over all of those shoes. And even though we left the door slightly ajar so we could just nudge it open with our elbow, that's the time that the wind blows and slams it shut on us. Tell me that God doesn't have a sense of humor. The second most popular door are the glass sliders that lead to our patio and pool area. These big, huge doors, which I tend to question the wisdom of having that much glass in hurricane season. But it's the door that our dog Asha loves the most, especially at nighttime when the darkness of the curtain has fallen. Our dog will stand there, her tail rapidly wagging, because she sees her own reflection staring back at her. And she'll start to joyfully bark because she wants to go play with that other dog staring back at her. You know, I would say something sarcastic here, but truth be told, I have walked face first into that glass forgetting to open it. I don't have any intellectual high ground to stand on here. And the third, final doorway that I think about in our house is our front door. It's painted this ruby, radiant red. It's so warm and so welcoming and so inviting and so rarely used. Anytime we go to open the front door, the hinges and they squawk as if it's saying to us, gee, thanks for remembering I'm here. These doorways that define and distinguish. Doorways, when you think about them, separate. They set apart different spaces and sometimes even shut some things out. And in some ways, on the one hand, it's okay to shut some things out. For me, there are creatures that live here in Florida, creatures that I'm thinking about here slither and slide on their stomachs, that I don't want to offer an extravagant welcome into my home. But then there are other instances, other moments when we separate, set apart, or shut out folks who are actually called to welcome. That's what's laying behind and beneath and underneath our scripture story this morning. And in many ways, it's not even an original story. It's actually an echo. An echo of another story. Who wrote the book of Acts also wrote the Gospel of Luke. And several months ago, while we were dwelling and diving into the Gospel of Luke, we landed on the story of the rich man and Lazarus. Remember that parable? Remember how the rich man feasted scrumptiously every single day, but Lazarus was a man who lay by his gate, shut out, separated from the rich man. And Lazarus was covered from head to toe in sores. He was in need of healing. He was hungry. He longed to crawl underneath the rich man's table and eat the bread that the rich man would have used to wipe the grease from his fingertips, and then he would toss that bread under the table where there would be dogs. And that's what Lazarus longed to feast on. Pull the thread of that narrative forward here to our story today. The story about a man who was lame from birth. A man whose legs didn't work the way he wanted them to, wouldn't support him or carry him or move him about. And we know so little about him. But we do know that this condition of being lame was the only normal he had ever known. And so he had to rely on some of his friends who would carry him, who would take him to the gate, to the temple gate, to lay there to receive alms. This man, much like Lazarus in the Gospel of Luke, he was shut out, separated from the temple. His disability did not allow him to go in. He was seen and cast on the sideline of life. Do you see him? Do you see him laying there on the side of the road? Maybe his shoulders are slouched and his head hangs down. He stares and studies at the stones that are cast all around him. When people pass by, maybe he looks up with some anticipation, but he's so used to being invisible. He's so used to people just rushing past, maybe tossing and throwing a few coins at him. So used to just being on the fringe, the fray, and the sideline of life. You see him laying there? And can you let that moment and that vision and that image speak and get tangled up in your life? When have you been on the sidelines of life? Maybe you have a story from your childhood or your youth where you went from the starter and star of that sports team to being the third string bench warmer. Or maybe encounters where you were the lead in a play, but then you went for your next audition and you botched it and it just went bad and you ended up being the fifth string anonymous person in the cast in the back. Those moments in your life when you have been placed on the fringe and the fray on the sideline. Dig a little deeper with me here. Dig a little deeper, because for some folks in the sanctuary this morning, this feeling of being on the sideline isn't just some distant memory. It's a lived experience, a reality as recent as yesterday. Because the reality all around us is that there are laws that drip with discrimination and place our brothers and sisters on the sideline. There are practices today that are saturated in prejudice that still push and place and put our beloved children of God at the very fringes, laying there, waiting for folks to see them for the beloved child that they are. There are these moments stirring all around us. And if we dig even a little deeper, it's important for us to notice and name the ways we as church, throughout our history and even today, continue on what happened at the temple. The temple that had shut that man out because of his disability. We have a history of that in the church, thinking that we're to be the guardians and gatekeepers, that we can define and distinguish who can come in and who can go out. Do we not see? Do we not see the ways that our own lameness connects us as a common humanity? How do we as a church help each other shine a light, authentically noticing how all of us have some brokenness, have some at moments been on the sideline? How do we take our place, laying alongside the one there this morning? It reminds me of a great quote from Reverend William Sloane Coffin, who was pastor at Riverside Church in New York for years in the 70s and 80s. And Reverend Coffin would often say that the church is often called a crutch. Of course it's a crutch. And what makes you think you don't limp? It's a great quote and a great reminder of the ways all of us share in that common human experience. That we need to notice it, because that's what Peter and John do this morning. Peter and John, who remember 2 weeks ago, were filled with the Holy Spirit. They got immersed and caught up in that promise of Christ's presence moving anew. That Spirit that moved in their midst as they were hanging out and hovering together in a room and sent them out into the world. And as they're walking down the road, they see that man laying there. I sometimes wonder if before they started to speak to him, if they crouched down so that they would be eye to eye with that man. Because we're told that they stared at him intently. They saw him. They saw him not as an end to their charitable giving. They saw him not as somebody who they could polish their halo by tossing a few coins to. They saw him not as defined or confined by his disability. They saw him as a beloved child of God. And as they stared at him, as they maybe got down, face to face, eye to eye, they asked him to look at him. Look at us, they say. Look at us because we see you. We see you for who you are. You are a beloved child of God. And then Pastor Peter continues on by saying to this man who was dependent on others to give him some kind of contribution, Peter says to him, I have no silver or gold. Way to be positive there, Pastor Eeyore, I want to say in response. But he continues on, and Peter says, what I have for you is the gift of the Holy Spirit, and they hoist and help him up. Now this is one of those moments in Scripture where I want to know more. I want to know what was going on in the mind of that man laying there on the side of the road. Was he confused? Was he concerned? Was he a bit afraid? He can't escape on his own. Was he frustrated? And to say the name Jesus, was that a name that he already knew? Did he maybe have a branch in his hand during that first Palm Sunday parade, and was he waving it, hoping Jesus would notice him? Or had he heard eavesdropped on the grumbling and griping of religious leaders about this Jesus who was stirring up the masses? Or was maybe he thinking, Jesus? Jesus who? But we don't get a second, and neither does he, because he is helped and hoisted onto his feet. And do you see him? Do you see him there as he's sort of standing there, wobbly, getting his bearings straight, having never stood up before? Do you see him start to take some of those first tentative steps? And then suddenly, as the serendipitous surprise and joy starts to stir within him, we are told he leaps. He leaps into the temple, into that very space where he had been shut out of, where he had been kept separated from. In the book of Acts, these themes that we're going to keep circling around are three. The first is to be open to the Holy Spirit, a spirit that flows to us and is supposed to flow through us. Peter and John let the Spirit, they don't keep it for themselves, they give it away. They offer it time and time again. The movement of the Spirit, we circle around that, and that movement of the Spirit leads us to wonder, to amazement, even in such a time as this. It's good to remember that the book of Acts, the backdrop, the setting there, is the Roman oppression. They felt the boot of the Caesar on their very throats through taxation, through fear. And it wasn't only that. In these days, those who were following the way of Jesus, there was starting to be a church fight with other Jewish members. And so there was this tension that was hanging in the air. And yet, in spite of that reality, they are still wrapped and lost in wonder, filled of the Spirit, a Spirit that continually calls for inclusion. We're going to hear this time and time again. This is going to be the refrain we sing over the next several weeks. That part of what we are led to as a people of faith is a doorway that doesn't shut or separate people out, but a doorway of extravagant welcome. The doorway of the church needs to be one that revolves time and time again, welcoming in everyone, and saying to everyone, I see you. You are a beloved child of God. And we don't just practice or sing or say that here in this space. We take that extravagant welcome like Peter and John out into the world. We take that inclusion, that message of God's presence, peace, and acceptance out, especially to the fringes and the frays and the sidelines today. To those folks who feel placed and put there. And we like Peter and John, stand or kneel beside them and say, I see you. I see you, beloved child of God. You are not shut out. Come, be welcomed. And that, my friends, is what makes any door or any gate beautiful.